You've been playing guitar for 1 year and your brutal death metal band just booked the sickest gig possible. A 3-song banger during the refreshment break at your local high school dance. But you have a problem. Your only guitar amp is this PV Rage 108 that's soaked in cat pee and shame. What are you gonna do? You pick up the phone and you call your grandfather because you know that he's been playing guitar since they invented it. Hey grandpa, can I borrow a sick rig for my sick gig? And he says, why sure, Sonny, I've got just the thing. And you say, shut up already and bring it over. And after 6 hours and a visit to the chiropractor, he shows up with this. A vintage Marshall JMP, a 4x12 cab with greenbacks, and a Gibson Les Paul. Ugh, who would ever want that? Thanks a lot, Pawpaw. How am I supposed to get my 6 squealy pinch harmonics and my pick rakes out of this thing? So you pick up your phone again and you call your favorite person in the whole world, and frankly, the only person that'll take your phone calls after you posted that song that you wrote for your ex trying to win her back, but you started crying while playing in the middle of it and posted it on social media anyways, thinking that she would think that you're very sensitive and soft and she'd come running back to you, but that's not what happened. And that person is your Sweetwater sales engineer. And you say, Ian, quick, I need your help. I've got this old grandpa rig and I need to make this thing chug, stat. And then Ian says, I've got just the thing. And then the next day, these show up on your doorstep. Now I'm gonna show you how to use these things to get the brutal death metal chugs out of your vintage grandpa amp. Let's do it. All right guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take all sorts of awesome high gain related guitar equipment, I record it with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that have definitely been watching way too much I Think You Should Leave lately, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today's episode is all about taking your vintage voiced, your vintage gain amp, and turning it into a modern high gain monster. I have been asked this question many times over the course of the channel. How do I take something like a JMP 2203, a JCM 800, or even something like a Laney Pro Tube or a Softtech MIG and get as much gain as I possibly can out of it? Well, today I'm gonna show you how to do just that. And I'm doing it with the help of my friends over at Sweetwater, because they have sponsored this video and they have provided the piece of equipment which all of this is really going to be centered around, and that is the new ODD box from Warm Audio. And if you're not familiar with this pedal, what it is essentially a Fulltone OCD drive reborn. The Fulltone OCD drive was a very popular overdrive for boosting amplifiers to get more gain out of them, and especially with older Marshalls, it just has a lot of output. The low end remains intact. It doesn't have a crazy high mid boost, and you can also add clipping from the pedal, and it just works really well with a lot of those vintage voice amps to get them into a more higher gain territory. Now, a little while ago, Fulltone went out of business, which means the OCD drive is no longer in production, but Warm Audio went ahead, they picked up the ball, and they basically recreated the OCD drive part for part in the ODD box. And as somebody who has owned multiple versions of the OCD drive, I can tell you this pedal very much nails the original spirit of the OCD drive. And really, this pedal is going to be the heart of this video, because not only are we going to use it in every scenario in order to get the most gain out of this vintage voiced amp, but really, if you're in a pinch, this is technically all you need to get a high gain sound out of your low gain Marshall. But we're gonna explore a number of different methods. I'm gonna show you guys a couple different ways to get to the same place with slightly different results, and then I'm gonna send you on your way chugging down the road. So first off, before we get to those pedals, we have our JMP 1978 2203 Marshall here. This is a stock circuit, and it does not have a whole lot of gain. We are also going into a greenback loaded Marshall 4x12 cab. So overall, we've got kind of a classically voiced Marshall setup here. And this amp, contrary to popular belief, doesn't have very much gain. Just to show you this, I'm going to take my 2023 Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s with the burst bucker, a PAF style pickup in the bridge. I'm gonna plug it straight into the amplifier, and I'm gonna show you how little gain this thing really does have. All right, right, so basically we have hardly any gain, hardly any breakup at all. That's with the preamp at just under 3 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna dime the gain. So yeah, as you can see in its stock form, the Marshall 2203 circuit doesn't have very much gain at all. So the first thing that you really want to focus on before we even get into the pedals and stuff, you're gonna want to have a guitar that has a pickup with a lot of output. So my choice for this video is the Fishman Fluence Fluff Signature Pickup. The Fishman Fluence is Fishman's active line of pickups, and these things are very modern voiced, and they also have an absolute ton of output. I have not turned any of the pedals on. I have not adjusted the gain on the amp. Here is the difference between the two guitars. So, night and day difference, not only in the voicing of the pickup, but in the output. We've got a lot more saturation than we had with the Gibson with the PAF style Burstbucker pickups in it. So that was step number one. Step number two is to kick in that OCD drive. If you guys are unfamiliar with running an overdrive in front of an amplifier, the typical way to do it in order to push the front end of the amp, while at the same time gaining more clarity and a little bit better response for the higher gain playing, is to run the volume all the way up, the drive all the way down, or the gain all the way down, and the tone to taste. This is going to adjust how much mid and high frequencies are being added or taken away from your guitar signal. So as you can see, we have a lot more gain than we originally had with the pedal turned off. Okay, so method one, adding an overdrive and getting your high output pickups in line, definitely has us closer to that goal of a high gain oriented sound. But one thing about these older amplifiers, usually when you crank the gain up, it just adds a lot of compression, a lot of squish. Doesn't sound super great. So what I want to do is I actually want to back the gain off on the amplifier, and that opens the voicing up a little bit, and I want to add some gain from the ODD box. And the reason that the ODD box is such a good choice for doing this is because it keeps the low end intact. It has a lot of output. It's got way more output than something like a standard Boss SD1 or an Ibanez TS9, which are other popular choices. It just hits the front end of the Marshall a lot harder, and it doesn't add a big mid spike. The Marshall JCM 800 or JMP 2203, 2204 circuits, they already have a lot of mids, and so do most of those older low gain amplifiers, because a lot of them were based around Marshall circuits. So when you have something like a TS9 or an SD1, sometimes it can just add too many mid frequencies and it can sound really unpleasant. With the ODD box, it does not boost the mids nearly as much, and it leaves the low end intact. So therefore, you still have low end from this amplifier, which doesn't have a lot of lows to begin with, and your mids aren't boosted over the top. So as you can see, even just doing that, even just using this pedal, we've got a ton of gain. So I'm going to back this down, and we're gonna move to method number two, which is stacking overdrives. A lot of people in the old days, to get the super saturated high gain tones and to get the really tight and fluid feel out of the amps, would stack overdrives. And this is another reason why the ODD box works really well in this scenario, because the ODD box stacks really well with other overdrives. Not every overdrive stacks well with others, but in this case, the ODD stacks very well. So we're gonna kick on the Boss SD1 Super Overdrive Wazacraft model. Now, another thing that comes in handy with the ODD box, there are two different modes. We've got a UK mode, which is a little bit mid-forward. It's got a little less low end. If we switch it down into the US mode, this will take some of those mids out and it'll keep a little bit more of that low end intact. And the last method that I want to show you guys is not stacking overdrives, but adding an EQ with a level or a volume in front of the ODD box. Because again, this thing stacks really well with other pedals, and with something like the MXR 10-band EQ, you can bump the volume way up, which will bump your signal way up. But when you do that, a lot of the time, that also comes with an unwanted low end boost by just pushing the signal that much harder. So with something like the MXR 10-band EQ, you can actually shape your EQ and shape your tone going into the ODD box and then going into your vintage amplifier. And as you can see, we have a ton of gain, probably more than we need at this point. We were also able to shape the tone so that it just sounded good being paired with the ODD box going into the Marshall. And this honestly sounds so good. You can get it sounding so modern and percussive and tight that you can use a 7-string through this setup and blow people's minds. I bet you never thought that you would see a 7-string going into a stock Marshall JMP and sounding brutal as hell, but I just showed you how to get there. So, if you guys have always been trying to find a way to make a Marshall or a vintage voice amplifier sound modern and brutal, I hope that this video helped. And if you want to pick up the ODD box or any of these other pedals that I use in this video to achieve that sick gain, or you want to pick up some active pickups like the EMG 57 here, or the Fishman Fluff Fluence Friggity Frack, or any other Fishman Fluence pickup, make sure to hit up that Sweetwater affiliate link down below in the description of this video. They're the ones who made this video possible, and if you guys pick up anything using that Sweetwater affiliate link, I get a nice little kickback, and it costs you nothing extra, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks again to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. If you guys want to support the channel directly, add your name to this list of incredible people by joining my Patreon community and supporting the channel that way. Everything you guys stick into that Patreon fund goes back into more and better content for this channel, and I would really appreciate that. Also, thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.